Can y'all hear me? Oh, looks like everything's working right. Well, I'm Ken Wills. We're here to talk about the book Exploring Wild Alabama, but more importantly, we're here to talk about what a neat place Alabama is in biological diversity and just natural beauty. Now, this book started, I've traveled all over the state most of my life, and I was showing a friend of mine's the type of vegetation you have on limestone in the Tennessee Valley, and he said, well, you need to put this in a book. And I got to thinking about what I could do, and I wanted to talk about the public lands in Alabama and what you can see there in terms of ecology and just neat natural things, and put the rough draft together. But it just kind of sat there. University of Alabama Press, they actually hooked me up with Larry Davenport, and he took the rough draft and made it into a real book. We cover 150 clusters of natural areas you can visit around the state, all publicly accessible. There's a couple of them that are drive-bys, you'll just be able to see them, but we try to raise awareness by making you aware of them. Hopefully one day you'll be able to actually get out and step on them, but most of them you can get out and run around and do whatever you want within reason. We have some good maps in the book. University of UA Cart Lab provided a lot of the maps. Or pretty much all the maps, except for one I'm going to show you next. Great photographers, Vitaly Charnay, Alan Kressler, David Frings, Mike Howe. Larry's got some good photos. If they're so-so photos, they're probably the ones I took because we didn't have any others of the area. But anyway, like I said, most of these are open for things like hiking, canoeing, nature walks. We try to emphasize the ecology and things you can see in just a short walk in these areas. The presentation you're going to see is just going to cover some of the highlights of what we've got in the book. Okay, this map shows you the physiographic diversity of Alabama. We like to thank Mark Bailey for providing this book. He's a great naturalist, the frog king of Conecuh National Forest, you might say. Anyway, the Alabama is kind of the heart of Dixie, really does fit Alabama in terms of biological and physical diversity. We're where all the Appalachian provinces end, and we're right in the middle where all the coastal plain sub-provinces come together. Physiographic province is kind of a description of the characteristic of the landform of an area. Alabama, I have been told, is second only to California in physiographic diversity. That's the types of landforms. We're not the tropical rainforest, but we are number one east of the Mississippi in biological diversity. I mean, that's beating out states like Florida and North Carolina. One of the reasons we get such a diversity is you take all that physiographic diversity and you run rivers through it, and you've got all these aquatic species. We're the aquatic snail capital of Alabama. We're like of the world, excuse me. Mussels, probably tops in the world, tops in the nation. Nation leader in fish, frogs, plant life, which is associated with this physiographic diversity. And our book is organized around these physiographic provinces and sub-provinces. And I am going to hand it over to Larry Davenport, who is an expert on rare plant glades, among other things. And I'm going to let him cover the rocky upper portion of the state. And I'm going to come back and cover the lower, more neglected, flatter coastal plain of the state.
All right, thank you, Ken. Ken is a little too modest about his accomplishment here. What he provided was a huge manuscript full of love. And what I did then was to chop and paste and add the photographs and the maps and all that mundane stuff. But I'm very proud of the fact that I was able to keep the love in this book, because when you read it, it's a book of wonder, as in Ken telling you directly, this is a wonderful place, you need to go there, check it out, these are the reasons why. And the first thing that intrigued me about his manuscript was that he took you on a journey from the top of the state to the bottom of the state. And so using these physiographic provinces, he says that if you plan it correctly, you can actually take a trip, a one-day trip from the northeast corner of Alabama all the way down and hit all 11 of these physiographic provinces in turn. okay, you'll have to drive really fast and watch for the speed traps, but it's possible to do that. So that's the way the book is arranged as a journey from top to bottom. All right, let's see if this works. Now, what I'm going to do is talk about the northern half of the state, and Ken will fill in the bottom half of the state. And so for each of these physiographic provinces, we have a chapter and then a series of sub-maps and descriptions of key places to go. Now, some of these are very famous, some of them not so much. And what we'd like to do in this talk today is let you know about the lesser known places. And perhaps you'll be inspired to not only buy the book, but have a checklist. I mean, the idea of the book is take a copy, put it on your dashboard, and wear it out. So if you happen to have 6 extra hours in the Dothan area, turn to that book, turn to those maps, and go someplace cool. So that's how it works. So for each one of these physiographic provinces, we have a series of destinations for you to check off. All right, starting at the top, if I can read looking up, you have the Appalachian Plateau. So this is like a part of the Carolinas extending all the way up to Virginia. That's the neatest thing about Alabama is you have all these physiographic provinces, pieces of other states, really, that collect together in Alabama. They all come together here. So this is like visiting Virginia and all that down through the Carolinas. And there's a description of the kinds of rocks that you'll see in those places. And there are a number of very well-known places which are listed toward the bottom there. You've probably been to Little River Canyon, which is a national preserve, and Cathedral Caverns, and I hope the Sipsey Wilderness. But we like to point out some of the lesser-known places, especially places like the Walls of Jericho. The Walls of Jericho sits up at the border of Tennessee and Alabama. It's 8,000 acres in Tennessee, 12,000 acres in Alabama. It was a major coup for Forever Wild to pull this off. It is a very, very famous place dating back to the times of Davy Crockett. He apparently killed him a bar there. I say that right, Joey? Yeah. Apparently he did that years ago. But anyway, it is, if you can imagine, a 200-foot high rock cliff in a big chasm. And there's a river that runs through it and then disappears and then reappears again. Just a magical kind of a place. Now, we have some warnings in our book, though, too. It's a pretty nice hike going in. You start at the top, a little place called High Top, which is aptly named, and you go down and down and down and down. Now remember, you got to climb back up. And the world record for climbing back out is 24 minutes. That was by a cross-country runner. So you better plan a full day and maybe a night or two. This is one of the places, too, where horseback riding is appropriate. And for each one of these places, we line out for you what kinds of accommodations will be there, whether they have cabins or picnic areas or whatever, and also what activities are permitted. So be aware of that. All right, Walls of Jericho. Now, this is the trail down. Again, very, very pleasant and a little rougher getting back out. Very well known for its diversity of plant life, and what you're going to experience there is, again, part of the Appalachian Mountains. All right, now, if we move a little south into the west, we get into the Tennessee River Valley. Again, we have a number of ecosystems that are based around that monstrous river coming down and looping across the northern half of Alabama. There are some extremely well-known places. If you haven't been to Wheeler National Wildlife Refuge in December and January, you better do it. I mean, unless you don't like to see 10,000 sandhill cranes all at once, and maybe a few whooping cranes. And of course, they have festivals for all that as well. This is a shot of the Muscle Shoals area, the dam up there, and all the wetlands that are associated with it. Again, those are well-known places, but here's a lesser-known place. This is Prairie Grove Glades. This is a Nature Conservancy spot. It is a little bit of Tennessee stuck in north central Alabama. So if you can imagine a cedar glade with all the accompanying plant life, very dry, very open, that kind of a situation, quite rare in our state. And I'm glad that the Nature Conservancy was able to get it. Now, some of the places up there are amazing for their diversity. The best time to go to this place would be probably in March, because there's this whole carpet of cresses, which are types of mustard, like the one shown on the right, including Leavenworthia alabamica, which should be our state flower. What is our state flower? Where's that from? How'd that happen? Okay. Yeah, the legislators need a little more botanical training. You are correct. All right. You get into the Ridge and Valley. And the Ridge and Valley would be a series of ridges and valleys, which again extend down from the Appalachian Plateau and end up there kind of squirming together, if you will, to a neat triangle at Oak Mountain State Park. And so what you have are these sandstone ridges and valleys in between, and you have cities like Birmingham that are built along those valleys. So you have a series of valleys going up and down. Now, this is like a part, again, of Virginia, because the Kusa Valley is actually part of the Great Valley, which extends all the way up into Virginia. So, again, this idea that we have all these different pieces of other states coming together. Now, there are a number of very well-known places, including Oak Mountain State Park, Moss Rock Preserve, and Ken Wills here is one of the people involved with preserving the preserve. And Ruffner Mountain Nature Center, I would add another one here, the Red Mountain Park, which is to the western side of Birmingham. And then you have the Cahaba National Wildlife Refuge in the Bibb County Glades. Let's look at some of this. What? Cahaba lilies. Who'd have thunk it? If you want to do something really fun, put this on your calendar, by the way. The third Saturday in May, 9 a.m., be in the little town of West Blockton, because we will be having the 29th annual Cahaba Lily Festival. Yes, I have given the same speech for 28 years, and I've memorized it almost. Actually, some of my audience has memorized it better than I have. But anyway, one of the best things to come out of that festival has been this refuge, because the attention that was given to the Cahaba lily then led to the preservation of this corridor of 3,500 acres on either side of the best lily populations in the world. Again, third Saturday in May. Now, nearby are the Bibb County Glades. Some of these have been preserved by the Nature Conservancy. Some are open to the public. But this is a strange world. In fact, it's been called the lost world of Bibb County, because what you have here are, again, glades, but they're based on a special kind of dolomite called Ketona dolomite. And there are some wild and crazy plants that live there. One plant that had, well, it was thought to be extinct and was found in this place. And I think 8 new species, never before described, were found there. So very, very famous. Again, some of these areas are accessible, and we point that out to you. Here are some of the rare plants like this gentian on the left and this prairie clover on the right. Now, there is a bit of the Blue Ridge that extends into Alabama. And we point this out, places like Mount Cheaha, Duggar Mountain, Wilderness area, those are parts of the Blue Ridge, actually. There is a wonderful trail, the Pinoti Trail, that connects on through Alabama to the Appalachian Trail. Cheaha State Park, of course, is well known. Its wilderness is well known. But we like this place, too. Where to go? This is the Mountain Longleaf Pine Preserve. This is a part of old Fort McClellan. Now, Fort McClellan was an artillery training ground. And so what they did was they would blow stuff up, and fires would be started. Well, it turns out this is good for longleaf pine. Longleaf pine is a plant that demands fire. It has to have fire swooping through the area, destroying all the competition. And then you get these massive longleaf pine trees. That can occur on the coast, and that can occur in the mountains. Longleaf is found in both places. So, this ecosystem was preserved by the fires started by the artillery. Now, when you go there, check in at the desk first, because certain areas are still off limits. They have crews working, trying to clear all the ordnance. And some areas have been declared clean, some not so much. It's a little disconcerting as you drive along the Ridge Road, and it says, do not leave your vehicle on the left side. Okay, I won't. Anyway, well, plus the signs have little children getting blown up. But worth doing, and very undervisited for several reasons. One animal that you might find there is the red-cockaded woodpecker, which is a very rare bird that only lives in those kinds of ecosystems. All right, the Piedmont. This would be a bit of Georgia that forms another one of these triangles coming in from the east this time. And here you have some strange and wonderful places based around granite. So we have limestone places, we have sandstone places, and we have granite places. Now, sadly, the granite places, well, very few of the granite places are in the public domain. And as Ken said, this is something we point out in the book because we want them to be included at some point, and maybe by bringing attention to them, that will happen. But this is a typical scene on granite. This is a little plant called, the red is a plant called Diamorpha that appears in these pools of water in the springtime. In fact, there's a whole succession of plants that will be found in the pools that are on top of this granite. And one will replace the next, the next, the next. Here's another view. Okay. Is it your turn?
I guess so.
Oh. Here you go.
All right. All right. Can y'all hear me? Okay. Just making sure we're playing dueling speakers here. I want to make sure we're all hooked up. Okay. Well, I'm going to talk to you about the neglected part of the state. When most people leave the northern part of the state on their way down to the beach, that's the only part of the coastal plain most people spend any time. They might stop at the Peach Park, they might stop at Bates House of Turkey, but they don't stop out in the woods between the coast and the mountains. So one of the things I wanted to do in this book was really emphasize all the neat things you can see in the coastal plain, which is the southern half of the state, and it actually goes up into around the Muscle Shoals area in northwest Alabama as well. It is a pretty diverse place. It's all called the Coastal Plain Physiographic Provinces, but you have different soils and things. You have black belt chalk, you have red hills, The first one we're going to talk about is the Fall Line Hills. That's what you guys are in right here in Montgomery, the Fall Line area. Where the rivers drop out of the uplands, that's where the rapids in, and the rivers start turning into big, wide, sluggish streams relatively. They're still pretty fast, a lot of them. And they have big gravel bars, and they're surrounded by swampy terrain. Places like Prairie Lakes Park. That's an excellent place to see a coastal plain stream. You get to see an hour south of Birmingham, you're looking at Cypress Swamps that look like they are in Louisiana. And big giant gravel bars you can have a party on, have a nice swim on, that kind of thing. There are alligators in the area, so just keep that in mind. But some of the rocks exposed very close to here is from the Great Wetumpka meteor crater. That's a neat place. It's bigger than the one out in Arizona. It's just covered up with trees and has towns in it and that kind of thing. So, but that's very close to here. The book covers some stuff around the Montgomery area. I went to Cooter's Pond this morning to stretch my legs before I came down here. That's just a really nice picnic area with those beautiful bluffs covered in forest with Spanish moss. Something y'all got here locally. The area I'm going to cover for the Fall Line Hills, this general region, we only had to pick one, is the Sipsey River Swamp. This is over in Tuscaloosa area. Oops. There we go. It is a free-flowing river, free-flowing from its headwaters at Natural Bridge Park. We talked about very different environment all the way down to the Tombigbee. It has nothing to do with the Sipsey Wilderness. The Sipsey Wilderness flows in the Black Warrior. This flows in the Tombigbee. It's surrounded by swamps for most of its length, so it's a very clean stream, undisturbed, has these very stable gravel bars, very important as a refuge for a lot of endangered mussel species and fish and other things. In the coastal plain, before we had the locks and dams on the rivers and things like the Alabama and all the streams used to expend their energy rather than cutting down in this very stable, low environment. They would move from side to side like a snake. And they're constantly changing channels. You get new channels and you leave old ones behind. Well, the old river channels, they start to silt in, and you start to get really water-tolerant trees like bald cypress that come into the edges. That's some of the most picturesque habitats in the coastal plain. But as time goes on, those fill up, and you end up with something like this. It's a meander scar that is a tupelo swamp in the wintertime, full of water, and then in the summer you get, plants growing like smartweed and all that grow back, and when it refloods in the winter, that feeds waterfowl. I like this photo because it shows you the diversity you can get within 100 feet. In the bottoms, they're very flat, but you get slight changes in elevation, you get totally different plant communities. You can see the bald cypress and the knees on the left-hand side. As you go up, you get on the natural river levee. When the rivers would flood historically, and this is old river channel, drop out the heavy sediment first, and you get a little piece of high land that doesn't flood but maybe a month a year. And you get things like beech and water oak on that, or willow oak. And then the land slopes back down, and it may stay flooded 6 months out of the year. On the far right, you get things like overcup oak. And so you can see a lot of forest changes. They'd be subtle unless you've got a good eye for it, and that's what we kind of explain this in the book, so you'll be able to spot this stuff. But a lot of diversity within just a very short walk. And I like to say the Sipsey River Swamp, when I was going to college in University of Alabama many years ago, it had zero protection, no public lands, but several of us, and Larry on Forever Wild, we all worked to get Forever Wild to start buying land in that area. Now they own about 7,000 acres and about 7 miles of river frontage in that area that you can go out and explore. We talk about in the book the places you can go. And so in terms of conservation achievements, it's one of the things I'm more proud of being involved with. Okay, the Black Belt. This is Alabama's White Cliffs of Dover region. It is a region underlain by chalk, which is very impermeable to water, and water runs off of it, and up to the hilltops it's very dry and fire prone. Pine trees won't grow on this stuff, so it's a natural domain for prairie species like you'd have in the Midwest. In this case, you can see this is the chalk cliffs at Epps where old Fort Tom Beckby's at. And you can see the kind of savanna glade of cedars and prairie species. The photo on the bottom is a Forever Wild property that is one of the last intact black belt prairies at old Cahaba. You've probably been to the old historic site of Cahaba. As you drive in, you pass right by this prairie. You probably thought it was an old pasture, but it's actually full of native species. It's never been plowed to my knowledge. And there's endemic rosinweed found nowhere else in the world, right in that area. But if you want to get out and see a black belt prairie, I'm going to tell you where to go. You go over to Livingston, the University of West Alabama. They have the Blackland Prairie Restoration area. This was an old pasture land, but they've gone in and planted native grasses and wildflowers. And it's got nice mowed trails. It's an easy place to just get out of the car off the interstate, not very far off the interstate, and just see some of these species like you'd have in the Midwestern prairies. You got things like the prairie coneflower. You got all these tall grasses like big blue stem, Indian grass, and things like the standing cypress on the that'd be the far right there. These folks have encouraged other people to plant prairies. I'm involved in a couple of projects of prairie restoration. Before we eliminated fire, we actually had prairies and savannas all over the state of Alabama. And around Birmingham, several of us, including Dick Mills and myself, have gotten involved. We've planted prairies in Moss Rock Preserve on areas that used to be kudzu. We've turned in fescue pastures in Limestone Park, which is in the Alabaster areas, a wetland and a grassland part. We're turning those areas into native prairie. And the folks at the University of West Alabama gave us a lot of help and actually contributed seeds or let us collect seeds in that area. So their work down there is actually spreading to restore native grasses and wildflowers all over. So pretty cool place. Okay, Nogi Ridge. That's an area, it's a transition between the Black Belt and the Red Hills. It's a sandy soiled region, mainly southwest Alabama, north of the Eufaula area. Historically covered in pine forest, upland pine forest, open, grassy understory. Great places for quail, and that's actually helped protect a lot of habitat in that area because that's still a big quail hunting area, and the people that manage for quail like to burn the woods, and that's what longleaf pine needs. And you can see there's the bird dog monument in Union Springs. I mean, the seriousness of the quail culture there has helped preserve a lot of good habitat. But most of that you cannot get through other than just drive through. So we're going to talk about some of the public lands. You've got the Whaley Nature Center in Barber County Wildlife Management Area. That's a lot of room to roam. But if you want to see the greatest diversity, you go to the Eufaula National Wildlife Refuge. This is a lot like the Wheeler Refuge we've talked about. It was on a man-made reservoir when they impounded the Chattahoochee River. But what they did is they took some Corps of Engineers lands, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife started managing them for wildlife to kind of mitigate some of the damage caused by impounding the river. And in this picture, you can see we've got the man-made lake, we've got the associated marshes, you got a bottomland hardwood forest up against that, and then you can see the pine trees in the background. On the uplands of that refuge, they're thinning out those pine forests that were planted years ago when they were forming this area, and they're turning it back into pine savanna, which is going to be good for a lot of sparrows, quail, and other wildlife. But most people, when they go to Eufaula Refuge, it's full of alligators. I think back in February, we probably saw over driving around on some of the tours, 50 at a time. Most of them are about this long, but there's some big ones in there too. But most people, you go to see the alligators or you go to see the waterfowl in the wintertime. And they manipulate these wetlands. They'll drain them down in the summer, let smartweed grow up, and then reflood them. And that feeds a lot of waterfowl. And you start attracting waterfowl like these bufflehead ducks on the right and these white-fronted geese on the left. That attracts things that eat ducks and geese, like this bald eagle in the middle. So you go down there in the wintertime, it's like a little miniature Wheeler Refuge. All right, the Red Hills. We're getting a little further into South Alabama. As you can see, that's from the Forever Wild track. You can see that very red soil, lots of iron in it. This is a very Appalachian-like portion of the coastal plain. Very hilly, very deep ravines and hollows, and a lot of the plant and animal species are the type you would associate with the Appalachians. But it's also got some unique stuff too. there's not a lot of public accessibility places in the Red Hills. Forever Wild just opened some up. Still need some trails in that area, but if you want to see the Red Hills, I would go to Haines Island Park. That's one of the best places to see it. It's a Corps of Engineer park on the Alabama River. You can still see the old car ferry, which is something that's kind of disappearing in this modern age. But then as you drop down to the river, as you're driving in the park, you're going to see these really steep bluffs and hills. And it is much like the Appalachians. And you'll find rocky springs, and those places support the endemic red hill salamander. Only place in the world it's found is just a few counties in Alabama's Red Hills. But you're probably not going to see that species unless you know what you're looking for. But on the nature trails there at Haines Island, you're going to see beech magnolia forest. We talked about the rich forest like you have in the Appalachians at Skyline and Walls of Jericho. Well, the forests down here are even more diverse. You have all the hardwood species that shed their leaves, and then you have some that are evergreen, like these southern magnolias. And so outside of the tropics, it's one of the most diverse temperate forests in North America. And you find neat things like these needle palms. So it's, you've got an Appalachian environment with little palms in it. So it's kind of a, unique environment. Okay, lower coastal plain. When most people think of the coastal plain, they think of everything being just flat as a board. Well, the lower coastal plain part of it, especially southeast Alabama, is pretty flat. Historically, the west part of, let's say inland southwest Alabama was covered in a little bit of a rolling hill, covered in longleaf and longleaf pine and little blue stem. Southeast Alabama is the region they call the wiregrass because it used to be covered like this picture in the upper left-hand corner, open pine forest with wiregrass underneath it. They had a big cattle culture there before the Civil War, but after the Civil War and fertilizers came along, it became a big crop-producing area, cotton and then later peanuts and all. Well, wiregrass is basically extinct in the wiregrass. It's found in very few places, very little longleaf pine left. Conecuh National Forest kind of straddles the middle of that, and it has some of the best remaining longleaf wiregrass communities left. And when you get in the lower coastal plain, you got some funky rivers down there. Some of them that start in the lower coastal plain, they have no mud in them because everything's sand down there and they're surrounded by wetlands. Well, the tannic acid from the wetland vegetation seeps into the river, and you have these tea-colored rivers down there. They call them blackwater rivers, but they're really kind of tea-colored. Things like the Escatapa and some of them that flow out of the Conecuh National Forest. That's my dad's boat on the Escatapa River. That's the only time I've ever had anybody launch our boat with a tractor. They literally ran the tractor and the boat down onto a gravel bar, so that's kind of a unique experience. If you want to see southeast Alabama, the best remaining natural habitats in that area are left along the rivers, which are still all free-flowing, like the Pea and the Chattahoochee. They're free-flowing all the way to the ocean. There's still giant, real primitive sturgeon that come up those rivers into Alabama. But if you want to see the river, you can go to a place called Fowler Park. It's where the Pea and the Chattahoochee rivers come together. And that is the Constitution live oak in the bottom right. That tree is probably as old as our American Constitution. So it's just a neat place to have a picnic and see the rivers and the big tree. Now, that upper right-hand photo is a photo of a gopher tortoise burrow from Chattahoochee Park in Houston County. That's an old burrow. You can see it's not being used. It's got some vegetation in front of it. But the piney woods of South Alabama support gopher tortoise, where the habitat hadn't been eliminated. And the gopher tortoise burrow is habitat for probably 200 other species, including things like the dusky gopher frog and southern pine snake and even rattlesnakes. But anyway, I mentioned the Conecuh National Forest. That's a really good place to see things down in that area. Geneva Forest, the Escambia Experimental Forest still has some of that good longleaf. But I'm going to tell you about a place when you're on the beach, when you're on the road to the beach and you've already stopped off for lunch at Bates House of Turkey and you want to stretch your legs before you hit the beach. You got no excuse not to go to Splinter Hill Bog. It is the Perdido-Rayburn exit right off 65. Within a mile or two of the interstate, you have the largest seepage pitcher plant bog in the world, where you have just a slight little slope and the water comes out of this really low soil. And you get all these pitcher plants underneath these pine woods, which is Nature Conservancy and the Forever Wild Program own land in that area, and they burn them alternately. So if you go to one and you don't see the pitcher plants like I did a couple of months ago because they just been burned, go to the other. But anyway, the Nature Conservancy is a little easier to find on their property, and you see stuff like this. These are all white-top pitcher plants. Now, a pitcher plant bog, like I said, it's seepage coming out of the hills, makes things kind of boggy. The soil is very nutrient poor and sandy, poor nutrient soil. The plants, basically, some of them have started eating bugs like vitamins to make up for that nutrient deficiency. You have the pitcher plants, which the bugs go down in. They can't get back out because of various reasons, and they drown, and the plant digests it. On the right, you can see that poor butterfly got into a sundew or dew thread, which basically just attracts insects with stickiness and good smells, and then it basically just rolls over and eats it. But pitcher plant bogs are not just important because of the carnivorous plants. They are a world center of diversity. You can literally take a beach blanket and throw down and overtop 40 species in these bogs. You got the marsh pink, and on the right, if you don't remember anything else from this presentation, that is a orange milkwort, but you're going to remember this if you don't remember anything else. Another name for it came up by Auburn students is bog Cheeto. Now, we are almost at the end of our presentation here. We're going into the coastal zone. That's the part of the lower coastal plain that's influenced by the ocean through tides and all that. Biggest wetlands in the state, Mobile Delta, Grand Bay Savanna. All the coast was not naturally condos to start with. There were natural dunes all over that coast. You can go to the Bonsecker Refuge in Baldwin County and see some of that and go through 10 different habitats. But I'm going to tell you another place. If you're on the other side of the bay, you go to the Dolphin Island bird sanctuaries. Now this photo, we're basically, I think you took that photo, Larry, but you're standing on the beach. You got the Gulf of Mexico at your back. And if you walk inland to the bayside, you've got 10 different habitats. You've got 4 dunes of sea oats like grasslands. You've got scrub, rosemary scrub. You've got slash pine woods. In the depressions, you have natural marshes and swamps. Go over on the bayside, you have salt marshes. And there's beautiful live oaks in the sheltered inland portions of the island. And so the Dolphin Island, the Audubon Sanctuary, you can see all that. But there's other sanctuaries on the island. Sometimes they're just half-acre lots that have been preserved because birds migrating from the Yucatan to our coast every spring need a place to rest. And then you can see these birds were tired out and they needed a place to rest. Now, also the coastal birds, because of all the development, they need a place where they can rest and breed, like this sandwich tern. And some of the other creatures need a refuge too, like this spadefoot toad and this white beach spider. So the Dolphin Island Bird Sanctuary is pretty important in preserving a habitat that's been largely lost. Now, last slide, just something to think about. You know, we wrote this book to make people aware of things. I mean, it's not going to make us rich, but I mean, we'll take the money. But anyway, the Alabama is about 6% of it is public land in some form of protection. But you got a lot of habitats like these granite outcrops, Jackson prairies, which we didn't discuss. There's almost no protection for those habitats. This is a picture of Pelicans Spit, which is one of the longest undeveloped sections of beach in the state of Alabama. It's on Dolphin Island. Really doesn't have any protection except for right around the beginning of it. Shows we've still got a lot left to do to protect our special natural areas in the state of Alabama. Forever Wild, a program Larry and I have worked to authorize and reauthorize and defend. It's done a lot of good for Alabama in protecting these special natural areas, but there's been some people that would like to take that apart, so we need people to rise up and defend that. We've got people in Washington that want to sell off all our national forests and stuff, so we need people to defend against that. Got issues of climate change coming up, kind of thing where we'll have to act locally and think globally. That's a big challenge in the future, but we would like you to get a copy of this book, go out and visit some of these places and be inspired to help get out and help protect them. You can volunteer at your local nature center. You can write your congressman when something's threatened, but there's lots of ways you can help, and we hope this book will inspire you to do so. All right, we are done and ready to take questions. And afterwards, I will say, if you have a copy of the book, you want to buy one at the gift shop, we'll be around. We'll be glad to sign it for you.
Thank you, Ken and Larry. We really appreciate you having you here. Today we are down to just one microphone, so if you would help us out, Mary Beth is over there. She'll be helping me. And so if you can just kind of pass it in between if you have questions, that'd be really helpful. So feel free to raise your hand. You can pass that microphone.
Is the Minimac Bog, which is down in Silver Hill, still open?
Unfortunately, when we were putting this draft together, one thing we made a point was until it had to go to the press, we kept it really updated. I made a special trip to tour there, and unfortunately, as the owner, the original owner passed, his wife closed it. So we took that one out of the book.
Because it was really fabulous.
Oh, it was awesome, but...
I had a question. What about the black belt? I had always read that it was rich black soil. Then I read that it was because of the racial makeup of the people living there. And I want to know what the truth is about the black belt.
You want me to do it, or
You
want
better do it.
Okay.
You take that one.
All right, the black belt.
I'm walking away from that one.
No. This is interesting, and I didn't get into it. We did a little more, believe it or not, a little more abbreviated presentation than we do sometimes, just to make sure you guys had time for questions, get back to your jobs after your lunch break and all that. But the black belt, you have chalk, and I mentioned how it's impermeable and it's prone to fire, and on the hilltops you get prairie. Prairie grasses make black soil. So when the settlers first settled there, they saw this soil that was black, which they weren't used to. They were used to red soils and things like that. And it wouldn't grow trees. And so like, ooh. But then they learned when they plowed it up, it was some of the best cotton land you could think of. And so most of it got plowed up. But you can still see the black soil there in places. You'll see it in fire ant mounds and pastures and stuff. So there really is a black soil there. And that's where the name came from. But with cotton came slavery and a large African-American slave population, and that's where you might get confused there. But it was originally based on the soil itself.
There's some questions down this way.
Well, mine was kind of selfish. I'm going to the Gadsden area. What should I see?
You have the book?
Yes.
All right.
Well, come on. Again, this is arranged from top to bottom. So let's see what would that be in?
That's going to be in the, it's going to straddle the Ridge and Valley and the
Yeah.
Appalachian Plateau. You want me to tell her something off the top of my head?
Top of your head, and then I'll show her the pictures.
Okay. When are you going to be there?
This weekend.
Okay. Well, have you ever been to Nakalula Falls Park?
No, I really don't.
Hey, normally the waterfall be trickling this time of
Yeah.
year, but it should be roaring this time of year.
Yeah.
There's a big waterfall, and there's a trail down in the gorge. Of course, up on top's kind of amusement park like. Just be prepared for that. But the gorge is beautiful, and the fall is beautiful. And for a while, recently acquired some land. Now, we try to keep the book up to date, but our Facebook page, it does have some updates. A place called Hines Rock. That's one of those rare plant glades. If you get them in Facebook, I can try to help you out there. But if you go there in the wintertime, there's a wildlife park that's got some ducks and geese and things like that.
Do we have a question over here before I pass it back down? Yeah. All right, you'll pass it. And then when you're done, pass it that way.
If each of you were to choose one place in Alabama that's your, I know it's hard because there's so many places, what place would you choose?
Walls Jericho. I like it because it's difficult to get to, and you are forced to take your time. And the diversity of plant life is unbelievable, especially in April and May. There's a lot of northern things that kind of sneak into that part of Alabama, so that would be my number one. Ken?
That's really hard, I mean, I'm going to qualify this. The Cypress Swamps very close to my heart. Moss Rock Preserve, which is rare plant glades, sandstone glades in Birmingham is very close to my heart. But if I were going to pick one little place in Alabama, the Perry Lakes Park down is where you've got those, within an hour's drive of Birmingham, you have these beautiful cypress swamps and free-flowing rivers, and it's all very accessible. A lot easier to get in the Cypress Swamp, I hate to say, but my nickname was Swamp Dog, so I love swamps. So I had to pick that, especially cypress swamps. But
Plus, you got really cool bathrooms.
yeah. Yeah, you can see the world, and the world can see you.
That's right.
When you were looking at this area, did you look at whether there'd been any more progress on the Cypress Swamp behind Oakwood Cemetery?
Well, I can tell you, I have been there back when I thought it was still open. And there's a bird watcher that I know very well, Larry Gardella, and I don't know if anyway, he had been in that area some, but my understanding is, I guess that's all in limbo. And of course, we don't put a place in the book unless it is open to public, or you can call. We do have some places you can call and arrange tours in the book. But if it's one of these things where we don't know whether anybody's going to be getting back in it or not, we don't put it in. But that's the kind of thing, when you locals get that open to the public, I'll put it on the website in the next edition of the book.
Yeah, I've been at.
Yeah, we need you all to sell out this edition of the book so we can write the second one and have it all updated for you.
Well, I had been to it a couple of times, and then the last
Sure.
couple of years, I haven't heard any more about it. So
It was one of these things, I think I don't know, I don't know the story, but I think the city might have got scared of liability and shut it down for a while or something,
shame.
But yeah, it's beautiful Tupelo with some scattered cypress and Spanish moss. And
The constitutional oak is in Geneva, Alabama. I want to push it a little bit. I believe you called it constitutional oak there. With
Geneva, Alabama.
Very accessible, nice little restaurant, little local golf course there. Recommend you going. You didn't talk a lot about the Talladega National Forest. I've seen some pictures. I've never really been in there. Was some of those on there and I just missed it?
Well, like I said, we had to pick 10 areas out of all those 150 cluster of sites to cover. I grew up in near the Talladega Division in Anniston area, and it's very well covered in the book. And it was in our what we call the Blue Ridge section of the presentation. We kind of focused on the mountain longleaf pine forest, which is places like Chockalaka and the Mountain Longleaf Refuge. But it's in the book. It was a whole section on the book. I know that area because I grew up there. And then there's the Okmulgee division of the Talladega National Forest near Tuscaloosa, which we cover in less detail, but it's covered too.
Did I understand correctly that there are some efforts to rescind or revise the Forever Wild legislation?
Yes. I was on the board of Forever Wild for 6 very proud years. And the last year I was on the board was a little painful because we were trying our best to get re-upped. And of course, that was passed, 80%, something like that.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, our troubles are over for the next 20 years. But no, there are people who want to gut Forever Wild and put the money elsewhere. I mean, Alabama, as Ken said, has preserved 6% of its wildness. That ain't nothing compared to the states that surround us. So I'm not saying the 6% is shameful, but we've got a lot of places that need preservation. So, yes. Anytime you find somebody who is talking against Forever Wild, well, slap them one. Never. Never. No.
The same guys that want to take the funding that state parks earn themselves and throw it elsewhere and close the state parks. It was that same mindset that public lands don't matter. And anyway, we were able to save state parks and so far forever wild, but
Still a battle.
yep.
Are there any more questions? No? All right, well, thank you all so much for coming, and thank you again to
All
Larry
right,
and Ken.
thank you.